Most people wait their entire lives to feel ready. They wait to feel confident. They wait to feel worthy. They wait to feel like the kind of person who deserves the things they want. But here is the cold truth you have been quietly avoiding. Readiness is not a feeling. Trust is not something that arrives one morning like the sunrise. Trust is something you build. Trust is something you forge in the fire of small, repeated, deliberate action. Trust is something you force yourself into becoming. And the moment you understand this, your life begins to change. Force yourself to become someone you can trust. There's a quiet failure happening inside millions of people right now, and almost no one is naming it. They go to bed each night promising themselves tomorrow will be different. They set alarms they will not honor. They buy books they will not open. They download apps they will forget by Wednesday. They write to-do lists on Sunday evenings like little prayers to a future self they secretly do not believe in. And then Monday comes, and they break the promise before the coffee is poured. And then they break another, and another. And over the months and the years, they become so accustomed to breaking their word to themselves that they stop even hearing those promises. They drift. They scroll. They numb. And the cost is not dramatic. It is not a single visible failure. It is 20 years spent inside a version of yourself you never picked. It is waking up at 50 and realizing you have been a stranger in your own life. Stop counting the years you have left. Start counting the promises you have kept. But here's the thing. The reason for this quiet failure is not laziness. It is not weakness. It is not your past. It is not your parents. It is not the economy. It is a single, silent fracture running through the center of your life. You do not trust yourself. And so you cannot trust yourself to begin, to finish, to stay, to rise, to become. Until you fix this, nothing else can be fixed. Now, listen carefully. What I am about to say will cost you something. You will resist. And that resistance is the proof that it is true. Here it is. The version of you that exists today was not chosen. It was accepted. It was the leftover version. The version you settled into because choosing would have required a promise, and a promise would have required trust, and trust would have required you to keep it. So you never started. You never chose. You accepted. And acceptance is not living. Acceptance is the slow leak that drains a life of its meaning. Now here's the truth. Every great life you have ever admired was built on a single quiet foundation. The person trusted themselves first. Before Edison lit the world, before Carnegie built his empire, before Lincoln governed a broken nation, before Ray Kroc flipped a single spatula into a furnace of purpose, before Helen Keller reframed what was possible for any human body, each of them made a private decision. They decided that their word to themselves was sacred. They decided that the small commitments would be honored. They decided they would force themselves to become someone they could rely on. And from that single decision, every larger miracle followed. Force yourself to become someone you can trust. That is the sentence. That is the title of your next season of life. Now let me give you the first principle, and I want you to listen as if it were spoken directly into the architecture of your morning tomorrow. The first principle is this. Name the promise out loud. You see, most people make promises to themselves in the silent vapor of intention. They think it, they feel it, they mean it, but they never speak it, they never write it, they never give it weight. And because it has no weight, it dies in the air. A promise that never leaves your mouth is no different than a wish whispered into a pillow. But here is the truth. A promise that never leaves your mouth is not really a promise. It is a daydream. And daydreams do not build trust. Daydreams do not build anything. So say it out loud. Write it down. Tell it to your mirror. I want you to remember a man named Thomas Edison. Not the version you read about in school. The real one. The one who failed 10,000 times before the light bulb worked. But the failures were not the secret. The secret was quieter. The secret was that every single morning, before he entered the lab, Edison stood before his workbench and spoke out loud the one thing he intended to do that day. Not in his head, out loud, to the room, to the empty lab, to himself. And when he had spoken it, he treated that spoken sentence as a contract. He wrote it down. He pinned it. He held himself to it. And that ritual, small and almost pathetic to an outsider, is what built a man the world could lean on. Edison did not become Edison by inventing. Edison became Edison by promising, in his own quiet voice, something small, and then doing it again and again and again until his word to himself became iron. So here is what I want you to do tonight, before this video ends. Pick one promise, just one, something small, something real. Say it out loud. Write it on a piece of paper. Place it where you will see it tomorrow morning. And then tomorrow, no matter how you feel, no matter the weather of your mood, you keep it. That is the beginning. That is the seed. That is how you begin to become someone you can trust. The second principle is this: start smaller than your pride allows. Most people try to become someone they can trust by making enormous promises. They vow to wake at 5. They vow to read 40 pages. They vow to work out for 90 minutes. They vow to write 1,000 words a day. And then within 4 days, the vow collapses, and they conclude that they are weak. They conclude they cannot be trusted. They conclude they are not the kind of person who keeps their word. But the conclusion is wrong. The promise was wrong. The promise was not too big. The promise was simply too proud. It was not built to be kept. It was built to impress, to perform, to be a poster on the wall. And the moment it became impossible, the trust you were building collapsed before it ever had a chance to settle. The size of your promise is not a measure of your greatness. The size of your promise is a measure of your discipline. Now here's the truth, and it is going to sting a little. A disciplined beginner makes a small promise and keeps it. A proud beginner makes a large promise and breaks it. And the one who keeps the small promise is the one who becomes unstoppable. Small is not weak. Small is how empires begin. There is a story history barely remembers, and I want you to sit with it. Andrew Carnegie, before he was the Carnegie who owned railroads and steel and libraries, was a 13-year-old boy delivering telegrams in Pittsburgh for $2 a week. He earned about $1 a week in today's terms. And what did Carnegie do with that small, unglamorous season of his life? He made a private vow, not to become rich, not to conquer the world. He made a vow so small that it fit on a thumbnail. He promised himself he would learn one new thing about the business he was delivering for every single day. Just one fact, just one. About commodities, about customers, about the men who used his telegraph lines. And he kept that vow. He kept it through rain, through boredom, through teenage restlessness. He kept it for years. And from that single kept vow grew a fortune and a name that still stands. So tonight, set a promise so small that the part of you that loves to make excuses will have nothing to say. 1 page, 10 minutes, 5 push-ups, 1 paragraph, 1 phone call you have been avoiding. Make it contemptibly small. Then keep it. Tomorrow do it again. The day after, again. That is how the muscle of self-trust is forged. The third principle is this: catch yourself in the act. Now, this one requires a kind of honesty that most people are not willing to practice. Because to catch yourself in the act, you have to watch yourself. You have to observe your own betrayals as they are happening. You cannot wait until Sunday night to audit the week. By then, the failure is buried under layers of story. By then, your mind has already rewritten the past to protect your pride. So watch yourself in real time, the moment you break the promise. You cannot change what you cannot see. Witnesses change behavior, even when the witness is you. History remembers a few, and here's a man I want you to sit with. Charles Schwab, who would later run Bethlehem Steel and save the American steel industry in the First World War, did something strange in his early years. He carried a small notebook. Every hour, he would stop and write 2 lines. What did I just promise? And did I keep it? That is all. 2 lines. Every hour. And the notebook began to reveal a man he had never met. A man who promised himself lunch was an hour long and let it stretch to 3. A man who told himself to write before he read, and read first. A man who kept finding himself bending his own word. The notebook did not save him because of some clever trick. The notebook saved him because the instant you are watching yourself break the promise, you have a chance to choose differently. The instant you look away, the drift resumes. So I am giving you a practice today. It will only take 5 minutes of your evening. Sit down, open a notebook, write the promises you made to yourself today. Tiny ones, large ones. Mark the ones you kept. Mark the ones you broke. Do not judge yourself. Just see yourself. That simple act of seeing, not judging, not punishing, but seeing, is the beginning of a different kind of life. A life where you are not at war with yourself. A life where your word to yourself means something you can lean into. The fourth principle is this: replace the excuse with the evidence. The mind of a person who has stopped trusting themselves is busy. Busy making excuses. Busy crafting reasons. Reasons are the architect's tool of the untrustworthy. Because if you have a good reason for breaking your word, then it wasn't your fault. You can shrug. You can move on. You can drift another day. But the person you are becoming does not traffic in reasons. The person you are becoming trades in evidence. There is a difference between an explanation and an excuse. Both use similar words. Both sound reasonable, but an explanation leads forward. An excuse leads nowhere. An explanation asks, what went wrong and how can I fix it? An excuse asks, how can I make this someone else's fault? And every time you choose the excuse, you subtract a brick from the house of your trust. The gap between the excuse and the evidence is the place where your self-trust lives. Now here's the truth. I want you to think about a man named Abraham Lincoln. The Lincoln of the school books is the rail splitter president, the Gettysburg orator, the man on the $5 bill. But the Lincoln I want you to meet is the Lincoln of 1,832, 23 years old, flat broke, his general store bankrupt, his partner dead, his creditors circling. He had every excuse available to him. A list of reasons a mile long for why his life had failed. But Lincoln did not write a list of excuses. He wrote a list of evidence. What did I actually do? What did I deliberately avoid? Where did I knowingly break my own word? And from that honest accounting, not from speeches, not from books, not from motivational phrases, Lincoln rebuilt the man he was. He did not rebuild his circumstances first. He rebuilt himself. The circumstances followed. So I want you to try something tonight, and I want you to try it with the ruthless honesty of Lincoln in his bankrupt year. The next time your mind says, I have a good reason for breaking this promise, do not accept it. Write it down. Pin it to the wall. Then write the evidence next to it. What actually happened? And close the gap. One excuse at a time. Force yourself to become someone you can trust. The fifth principle is this: keep the word even when it costs you. This is the principle most people skip. They will keep small promises easily. They will keep the promise when the day is bright. They will keep the promise when the mood is right. But the moment keeping the promise becomes painful, becomes inconvenient, becomes costly, they abandon it. And they tell themselves it was reasonable. They tell themselves they made a wise decision. They tell themselves a more efficient version of themselves will arrive tomorrow. But tomorrow never arrives. Tomorrow is where broken promises go to die quietly. Now, listen to me. Because this is the place where self-trust is actually forged. Not in the easy promises, in the costly ones. The promises kept when no one was watching, when the bed was warm, when the friends were texting, when the couch was calling, when the alternative was so seductive that a lesser version of you would have already folded. That moment, right there, is the anvil. That moment is the fire. That moment is the steel. And like a blade being sharpened against stone, that is what your character is being ground into. A blade is not a blade until it has been touched by stone. I want you to think about Ray Kroc, the man who turned a single San Bernardino burger stand into a global empire. And I want you to think about the part of his story the world does not tell. Kroc was 52 years old when he began. He was a milkshake machine salesman. He was already past the age when most people would have accepted their small life. He had failed often. He had been laughed at often. The system he saw in that little stand was no guarantee of anything. But Kroc had made earlier, smaller promises to himself. In his 30s, in his 40s, he had been the man who got up when it was costly, who approached the customer when rejection was certain, who wrote the proposal when sleep would have been kinder. He had been doing this for 20 years, this invisible work, this unglamorous work, this keeping the promise even when it costs work. And when the McDonald's moment arrived in 1954, Kroc did not have to build a new man from scratch. He already was the man. The empire did not create him. He had been building himself, quietly, in the costly keeping of small promises. So tonight, choose one promise you have been avoiding, one that costs, and keep it, tomorrow and the day after. Not because it is easy, Because it is hard. Because self-trust is forged exactly where excuses want to live. The sixth principle is this. Surround yourself with mirrors of who you are becoming. You become someone you can trust, in part, by who you keep around you. Not their words, their standards, not their speeches, their example. You are not a self-made person. You are a self-kept person. And the keepers of the self are the few souls you choose to let close. The room you sit in, the conversations you allow, the books you keep on your shelf, the voices you let into your ear as you drive, the people you call when your day has gone sideways. All of these become the witnesses of the version of you that is forming. You are the average of the 5 people you keep closest. So choose those 5. Carefully. A friendship that is comfortable but pulls you away from your word is a betrayal disguised as warmth. Now, here's the truth. Helen Keller, blind and deaf by her second year of life, could have become a symbol of pity. The world expected it. The family expected it. Many in her generation would have quietly accepted that role. But Helen Keller did something different. She kept a small circle of fierce witnesses. Anne Sullivan, Mark Twain, a few others who refused to let her identity be defined by what she could not do. And that circle, small and undistracted, became the mirror in which Helen Keller began to see a serious self, a writer, a thinker, a force. The mirror didn't create her, but it confirmed her. And confirmation, repeated daily, is how a self that can be trusted is built. So tonight, look around. Audit the 5 people closest to you. Audit the voices in your phone. Audit the rooms you spend time in. Do they reflect the person you are deciding to become? If they don't, you do not have to announce anything. You do not have to make a scene. You just slowly, quietly adjust the furniture of your life. Keep the witnesses of your becoming. Release, gently, the voices that pull against it. And now we come to the quiet question you have probably been forming throughout this entire hour. Why does this work? Why does it work to force yourself to become someone you can trust? What is the hidden driver behind every single one of these principles, from the smallest to the largest? Now, here's the truth. It is simple. What all of these rules share is not some clever strategy. It is not a productivity hack. It is not the right morning routine. It is identity. You do not trust yourself because you have not yet built a self that can be trusted. And the moment you build it, through the kept promises and the small kept vows and the costly kept mornings, you stop being a person who wishes. You start being a person who is. And the world around you can scent a person who is from across a crowded room. Doors begin to open. Conversations go deeper. Opportunities arrive that did not arrive before. Not because the world changed, because you did. Because the force you were quietly building inside yourself became a gravity. And like a magnet drawing iron toward it, the life you were meant to live begins to draw toward you without your having to chase it. Now listen to me, because we are about to go somewhere even quieter. And this part is not for your calendar. It is for the chamber of your private self. And in that chamber, you must hear these words as if they were spoken into your bones. Comparison is a thief that robs you of joy and clouds your mind. Every time you measure your chapter 1 against another person's chapter 20, you steal your own momentum. The person making a single kept promise today is more trustworthy than the person making grand declarations and breaking them. So stop comparing your day 1 to someone else's day 1,000. Just keep your promise. That is the only competition. Validation begins within. Not from applause, not from a title, not from the followers, not from the reflection in the eyes of someone who thinks well of you. The deepest validation is the one your own inner voice whispers when you keep a promise that no one in the world knew you had made. That whisper, repeated 1,000 times over a lifetime, is what becomes your spine. You are the center of your own universe. Never forget it. The world will try to make you peripheral. It will try to seat you in someone else's story. It will try to make you a supporting character in your own life. But the universe of your days revolves around the gravitational center of your choices. And when you sit in the center of your own life, when you refuse to be a footnote, you begin to live differently than everyone you know. You must reclaim the throne of your own mind. Before the world believes in you, you must believe in yourself. Not as a slogan, as a structural fact, as a load-bearing wall. The world reads you. People you have not yet met are already reading the energy you carry into a room. That energy is either the energy of a person who has been keeping quiet promises to themselves, or the energy of a person who has been breaking them. You can feel the difference. And so can everyone else. So let me bring this home. In the simplest words I have, stop waiting. Stop making excuses. Start doing. That is the shortest version of the new life. Say those words to yourself before you sleep tonight. Stop waiting. Stop making excuses. Start doing. Tomorrow morning, the life you have been wishing for will not be given to you. It will be built by your smallest kept promises, by the vow you make in the dark and honor in the light, by the morning you rise when the bed asks you to stay, by the page you write when the distraction is louder than your purpose, by the call you make when the silence is easier, by the standard you refuse to lower when lowering it would feel like relief, by the workout you do when the couch is calling. Brick by brick, you lay the foundation of a self that can be trusted. And from that quiet fortress, your outer life will follow. Slowly, then suddenly, the world will begin to trust the person who has learned to trust themselves first. Everything changes the moment you become someone you can trust. You will sleep differently. You will look in the mirror differently. You will speak differently. You will keep your word in rooms no one else will ever know. And the version of you that the world has been waiting for, the version that promises and delivers, the version whose handshake you can feel the weight of, will at last begin to exist in the same room as your body. Decide who you will be today before the day tells you who to be. Decide, and then move. Quietly, deliberately. Like the architect of a life that has not yet been built, the blueprint is in your hand. The first brick is the smallest kept promise of your day. Force yourself to trust yourself. Force yourself to become someone you can trust. Everything else flows from that single quiet decision. Readiness is not a feeling. Trust is something you build, moment by moment, promise by promise. A promise that never leaves your mouth is not a promise. It is a daydream that builds nothing. The size of your promise is not a measure of your greatness. It is a measure of your discipline. Small is not weak. Small is how empires begin. You cannot change what you cannot see. The witness must be you. The gap between the excuse and the evidence is where your self-trust lives. Tomorrow never arrives. Tomorrow is where broken promises go to die quietly. A blade is not a blade until it has been sharpened against stone. Self-trust is forged exactly where excuses want to live. A friendship that is comfortable but pulls you away from your word is a betrayal disguised as warmth. You are not a self-made person. You are a self-kept person. You do not trust yourself because you have not yet built a self that can be trusted. Comparison is a thief that robs you of joy and clouds your mind. Validation begins within, in the quiet whisper after a kept promise no one saw. You are the center of your own universe. Never forget it. Before the world believes in you, you must believe in yourself, as a load-bearing wall. The world reads you. People you have not met are reading the energy you carry. Stop waiting. Stop making excuses. Start doing. That is the shortest version of the new life. Everything changes the moment you become someone you can trust. Acceptance is not living. Acceptance is the slow leak that drains a life of its meaning. The kept promise is the only currency that matters in this quiet work. Daydreams do not build trust. Daydreams do not build anything. The person who keeps the small promise is the one who becomes unstoppable. The quiet work of becoming someone you can trust is the only work that compounds. The version of you the world has been waiting for is a version you must first build. Witnesses change behavior, even when the witness is only you. A disciplined beginner makes a small promise and keeps it. A proud beginner breaks it. The empire did not create him. He had been building himself quietly for decades. Confirmation, repeated daily, is how a self that can be trusted is built. The force you build inside yourself becomes a magnetism. Doors begin to open without chasing. You must reclaim the throne of your own mind. Slowly, then suddenly, the world begins to trust the person who has learned to trust themselves first. Your word to yourself is the foundation of every larger miracle that follows. The blueprint is in your hand. The first brick is the smallest kept promise of your day. Decide who you will be today before the day tells you who to be. What all of these rules share is not strategy, it is identity. Force yourself to trust yourself. Stop breaking promises to yourself. Trust is not a feeling, it is built. The size of your promise is your discipline. Small promises, kept daily, build empires. You are the average of the 5 closest. Catch yourself in the very act. The world does not trust drift.